Just want to say good afternoon, Onyx alumni, Onyx students, and guests. My name is Nicole Nelson. I graduated from the college, class of 2011, and I am the chair of the Onyx Senior Honor Society Graduate Board. Thank you so much for joining us. We have a fantastic program ahead of us. Today, you'll hear from a panel of Onyx alumni discussing their perspectives on the Supreme Court striking down affirmative action, the significance of affirmative action, and its potential future. Then we'll celebrate our newest inductees to Onyx with the ceremony where they will receive their Onyx pins and we'll honor their achievements. Our time together will conclude with a reception with hors d'oeuvres. But before we dive in, what is Onyx? For those of you who might not be familiar with the Onyx Senior Honor Society, it was founded in 1974 when the university was a less welcoming and less emotionally safe environment for Black students. 7 university students, Joe Watkins, Craig Inge, Claudette Christian, Sharon Moore, Linda Walker, Robert Wilson, and Charles Wardlaw, with the help of Provost Elliott, Dean of Students Alice E. Emerson, and Associate Dean of Students Harold Haskins, formed the society. As a quick aside, Harold Haskins, known affectionately to students and alumni as Hask, is way more than a brief reference or a footnote in the history of Onyx and so many Black Penn student stories. He worked at Penn for over 30 years to help Black students not only survive the university, but thrive. In addition to founding Onyx, he helped found several student organizations, including but not limited to the African American MBA Association, the Leadership, Education, and Development Lead Program, the Black Wharton Undergraduate Association, the PennCat Pre-Freshman Program, and the Center for Africana Studies Summer Institute for Pre-Freshmen. He also helped several Black Penn students retake courses, provided them with internships, helped them make professional and educational connections, and helped them find jobs after Penn. Even if you weren't a Black undergraduate student at Penn, Hask still had an impact on you. Apart from mentoring youth of all races, has anyone here used the tutoring center? Yes, please raise your hands if you have. Okay, that's quite a number of you. Well, guess what? He helped found that too. The reason I brought up Hask now will come up later. So we're just gonna segue back to the history of Onyx. Over the years, Onyx has created, participated in, and hosted a number of programs at Penn. They include the Onyx Freshman Honor Roll, the Haskins Debate, where Onyx students would debate different perspectives of an issue, several community service projects, including volunteering at the Philly High School Fair and plotting and maintaining a community diaspora garden at Bartram's Garden in West Philadelphia, and a meeting between the other cultural honor societies and Penn's president, as well as other initiatives. As for how Onyx works, Onyx typically inducts members in the spring of their junior year or in the fall of their senior year. Members are chosen based on academic achievement, leadership, and community service. Even though you have to qualify to become a member, we want to have more programs like tonight's panel discussion to have conversations about difficult topics. For individuals who may not be in Onyx, it takes a village to recognize communal achievement. What I request is that you give us support. There are ways that you can get involved, such as joining the graduate board and donating to our fundraiser, particularly with Onyx's 50th anniversary coming up next year. The link to our fundraiser is tinyurl.com/onyx-gofundme-2023. This event was conceived of by the graduate board, Onyx alumni, and Onyx undergraduates. It was an absolute pleasure working with the Onyx undergraduates. The graduate board consists of me as chair, Rudolph Clark Jr., Wharton class of 77 as treasurer, Joe Watkins, college class of 75, and also one of Onyx's founders as the communications co-chair, Vicki Hill, college class of 82 as event planning co-chair, Jean Charles, Wharton class of 87 as membership co-chair, and Michaela Warwick, class of 2020 as secretary. We also have some fantastic volunteers, including Murray Spencer, college, class of 75. Hey, Murray. Kim Gashard, class of 76, and Shari Brown, college, class of 79, and graduate school, class of 79. Hey, Shari. Unfortunately, Jean, Rudy, Michaela, and Kim couldn't make it tonight. And I'd also like to thank our wonderful panelists and moderator, Richard Gay, Wharton, class of 1990, Franklin Ferguson, college, class of 1990, Michelle Watson-Taylor, college, class of 02, and Marissa Kess, nursing, class of 2023, and Khalid Moyeldin, college, class of 2024. They're a great group, and please welcome me in giving them all a round of applause. In our quest to make our organization more relevant to alumni and students, we want to make our membership in Onyx have significance beyond our time at Penn. HASC always encouraged us to help each other personally and professionally, to help each other get jobs, make career transitions, and provide mentorship to both students and alumni. The graduate board is the formalization of this connection between Onyx undergraduates and alumni. He also encouraged us to give back to our broader community, which I hope we can work together to do. All of these things have always been critical and are even more so now that the permanence of Black students at Penn is not guaranteed. It's been almost 6 months since the Supreme Court struck down affirmative action. The ruling ensures that future students have fewer opportunities than their baby boomer, Gen X, and millennial, and some Gen Z counterparts. Between the ruling, as well as the constant attacks on African American history, I'm sure that we're all tired. Now I get to put my historian hat on and give you a brief history as a trained historian of modern American history, 1865 to present, on affirmative action. So briefly, affirmative action has a long history, but for the purposes of this conversation and moving the program along, I'll focus on a few key facts. The phrase affirmative action actually has its roots in the New Deal in a non-racial context from a federal law that was passed in 1935, better known as the Wagner Act, which gave workers the right to create and become part of unions. Flash forward a few decades later, and President John Kennedy used the term affirmative action in an executive order to mandate contractors to hire, at the time they used the term minorities, on government contracts. He also issued another executive order to prohibit discrimination against Black people in construction firms that had government contracts. Jumping ahead a little bit, basically, President LBJ gave the intellectual framework for affirmative action in a commencement speech at Howard University in 1965 called "To Fulfill These Rights." In it, he imagined it as a corrective for the centuries of harm that Black people who have roots in American chattel slavery endured. Skipping ahead a little bit, in the 1960s and 70s, colleges and graduate schools began developing affirmative action programs to expand access to higher education. And not soon after, the backlash came, and it was swift. First, with the Supreme Court's ruling in 1978 in Regents of the University of California versus Bakke, which made goals and timetables to measure diversity in higher education, derisively known by affirmative action's opponents as quotas, illegal. Then 2003 comes around, the Supreme Court heard a pair of cases that challenged the use of race in college admissions. Thankfully, the court ruled in one of the cases, Grutter v. Bollinger, that universities could consider race in college admissions. In 2013 and 2016, the Supreme Court heard and rejected claims by Abigail Fisher to challenge the use of race in college admissions at the University of Texas, Austin. And in June 2023, as we all know, the Supreme Court struck down race-conscious affirmative action race-conscious admissions and Students for Fair Admissions v. Harvard and Students for Fair Admissions versus UNC, stating that it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the 14th Amendment. Now, if you know your history, that's painful. It's bitterly ironic, considering that the 14th Amendment is a Reconstruction Amendment, i.e., it was passed right after the emancipation of formerly enslaved people to guarantee their rights, citizenship, and equal protection was one of those clauses. So it's painful then to have that particular amendment bludgeoned against African Americans. It's bitterly ironic. We have our very existence at universities and Penn under attack. Organizations like Onyx were created to help ensure that Black students didn't feel the pangs of loneliness as our belonging at these institutions was questioned. Organizations like Onyx aren't just social in nature or for professional development. They're political. By political, I don't mean electoral politics. I mean that it has greater meaning and it challenges the status quo. It's political to exist in an institution that was not intended for you, especially if you're Black, and even more so if you're a Black person descended from American chattel slavery and Jim Crow, when the nation is fearful of repairing the harm that it did to you and your ancestors. That's why HASC and the 7 Black Penn students created Onyx. They did so to encourage, inspire, uplift, and support Black students at Penn, even if they weren't Onyx members. And that's why we as Onyx members have a responsibility to give back and improve conditions for our community, which I'll touch on in my closing remarks. With all of this being said, I will again share one of my many shameless plugs, requests for your kind, generous donations to go to our GoFundMe campaign to help subsidize this event, as well as other programs to support Onyx members. And now, I'll turn things over to Khalid Moyoldin so he can introduce the Onyx Alumni Panel on Affirmative Action. Thank you.
Franklin Ferguson from the college class of 1990. Franklin is a former law school professor and current lawyer based in Los Angeles who prosecutes civil rights violations on behalf of various victims of police misconduct, educational deprivation, discrimination on the basis of race, gender, and disability, and wrongful termination. Can I get a round of applause for Franklin? And you can. Our second guest is Richard Gay from the Wharton class of 1990. Richard is a founder of 5-Pack Entertainment, a firm providing consulting service for profit and nonprofit entities across the entertainment industry. Richard also serves on the board of trustees for Weill Cornell Medical Center, is a guest lecturer at Juilliard, the Berklee College of Music, and several other traditional universities. Can I get a round of applause for Richard? Our third guest is Michelle Watson-Taylor from the college class of 2002. Michelle is an award-winning feminist writer, educator, public speaker, community activist, and retired social worker. Her work centers around diversity, inclusion, and equity, queer identities, race and culture, feminism, and intersectionality, mental health, and social work. She's a PhD candidate at Temple University, where she also teaches courses on the intersections of race, gender, and sexual identity. And our final guest for this afternoon is Marissa Kess from the nursing class of 2023. Marissa is a trauma/ortho nurse at Penn Presbyterian, originally from Long Island, New York. She's an MSN candidate for Penn Nursing's Health Leadership Program, and her interests are in health education and policy. She's a former Congressional Black Caucus Foundation intern and the current program director of the African Community Learning Program. Round of applause for Marissa. So I think for the structure of this, we'll begin by just asking questions for all panelists. Feel free to jump in whenever. But our first question is a pretty broad question. What was your initial reaction to the 2 cases that overturned affirmative action in higher admissions, Students for Fair Admissions versus Harvard, and Students for Fair Admissions versus UNC?
Hello. First of all, thanks for having me here. This is very, very exciting for me to be here and to talk to you about these issues. When I heard the cases came down, I was surprised that it took so long. I thought it'd be much sooner in life, that it'd be like 10 years ago or 15 years ago, because this has been on the horizon for a long time coming, right? So I civil rights practice, I prosecute civil rights violations, which means I try to prove that someone did something wrong based on the color of someone's skin or based upon their gender or based upon their disability, right? I have to show that someone's mindset was a certain way, okay? These cases came down at a time when I thought it's perfect timing for it to come down because it was gonna happen at some point in time, right? And the message that we'll get to later is this: what is next? What is next? And I just want to say one thing to you, which is this. The one thing we can do is to understand the decision by reading it very carefully. And I'll share one thing. There's a thing called standing, meaning why do you have a chance to be in court? Who are you, right? The court said these students who didn't prove themselves to be not admitted based on race, who weren't necessarily rejected because of their race, they have standing, but the university prove that their system is actually showing a benefit to society. In other words, the plaintiffs have no standing, but it's okay. And the actual schools who are trying to uplift persons based upon societal needs, they can't prove their case, right? It's a very, very important distinction to realize and to understand. So that's my first reaction to it.
My first reaction was, what the hell are they talking about? How are you so numerically overrepresented and you're complaining? That didn't make sense to me. When I was here, it was 5% Black students and about 25% Asian students. And at the time, Black people were about 11, 12% of the population, and Asian students were 3% of the population. And my thought was always, what are you complaining about? But I realized then that anti-Blackness remains one of the strongest global currencies we have, and in order to be an American, you need to trade in it. And so I think that there were people who learned that in order to establish yourself as a true American citizen, you need to trade in anti-Blackness. And so they took that to the Supreme Court to let everybody know that we are firmly American by way of anti-Blackness, and we will throw Black people under the bus, and we will blame them for all these things that are not quite happening to us. If you're asking for initial reactions, that is mine. And I should also let y'all know I won the Malcolm X Award while I was here, and I have not changed in 21 years. So be prepared for that today.
I think I had a similar reaction. I found the news. I was in the middle of the hospital room with this patient. I'm trying to straight cath them. I don't know if many people know that. I'm trying to insert a catheter into her private area. I look up and it's on the news, and I was shocked. I was shocked, but apparently I'm one of the few that shouldn't have been shocked, and that is the first thing to have known. But it's so sad and it's shocking, and I'm surrounded in a room by white nurses, and it's just going to be the same continuous issue that continues on. So shocked, disappointed. Those were some of my first reactions.
I agree, so we're just going to go on to the next one because I agree with all of that. We're going to go on to that.
Okay, this is, I guess, looking back a bit more. The second question we have for our panelists is, how did affirmative action impact your career trajectory and life?
I guess I'll pick up this one. So it's interesting because I actually come from the corporate world, right? So just to give a little more on the bio. So Wharton undergrad, Stanford Business School. I was a partner at a firm called Booz Allen in Hamilton, and I went to do some stuff at Viacom. I was CEO of a bunch of the networks, but in the entertainment industry. And the reason I say that is because I'm not from academia. right? And everybody kind of picks this up now as kind of, here's what happened. You see the universities are part of this, right? And it's a school thing. And it's like, oh, the layman on the street, or the layperson on the street is like, well, affirmative action is about getting people who are less qualified into an institution over people that are more qualified. And that's just what people redact it to. And I'm fortunate because my brother is and was the dean of the med school at the University of Michigan. Anybody knows Michigan was one of those schools that was in a lot of these suits that was happening, right? So in talking to him, one of the things that's really interesting in terms of how it's helped how it's affected my career is I work in an industry that, like a lot of business, is about money. And when there's some hard currency like that, there's a real penalty to when you start doing things like, oh, these Black folks could make us money, but we don't want them at the table, and that's going to be fine. Then somebody else is going to find a way to make that money because that's how business works, right? So I'm fortunate to be in business and to be in entertainment in particular, where there's all these avenues to do things. And I thought that was unique until I talked to my brother at the University of Michigan. He's dean of admissions at the med school, so he's deep in this admissions thing. And he's like, well, yeah, that's actually what happens in terms of what's next and how you can kind of win with this, because it became a numbers game. It became a let's count yours and you count mine. And one of the things that my brother did is just like on the business side, where I found a lot of cracks, right? I'm doing Soul Train as a Broadway musical. Well, there's a real good justification for the kind of team I put together around that to tell that story, right? And there's all kinds of cracks in that. And what my brother said is, well, in education, we need to try and do a lot of that same thing. So as opposed to how many people do we have here to go to school, that would imply that the point of university is to come and do school. As opposed to for the med school, he says, well, I need doctors who can work in inner cities because the medical needs for Black people are different. So I need doctors that reflect that. I need people that are from immigrant communities because immigrants have a different relationship with their medical system than anything else. So then the justification isn't, can you count the people that are sitting in my class and what do they look like? It's here's what I need to output as education, right? Just like from the business side, I need to make money. And how we get there, oh, diversity is a thing, that diverse content helps do that. It's popular, it makes money. For him, I need doctors that look like this. I need people that didn't go to prep schools all the time and have tutors all the time, because if you had to study while you were working 50 hours a week and do whatever, you know what that's like? Being in an emergency room. When stuff's going crazy, and I need people who can just adjust on the fly and who know these communities. So now the rationale in terms of why are you here and what are we talking about, it's not about the numbers on the page and the numbers and what my class looks like. It's like to do my job as a university or as a business and to output things that achieve my goals, which is I'm a university, which is to have people be productive in society. What does that mean? And that's changing the metric. Right? That's changing the metric to I need doctors that look like this. I need teachers that look like that. And that's why my inflow of people needs to look like this. And that's a different battlefront. Now, it's a lot of things that need to go into that. But for me, I've been lucky in my career because in media and in business, it's really clear. If something to make some money, it's going to find a way to happen. And I've been very fortunate to do that around diverse initiatives for a lot of what I've done.
I benefit because I'm Black. Like, I'm gonna be real with y'all, right? I don't know what the Penn landscape is right now, but when we were here, the majority of us were coming from inner cities, coming from big cities. We were not coming from families with money. Most of us were not first generation. We were descendants of people who experienced chattel slavery in these United States. So when those Black Republicans came up with affirmative action and wrote that it was supposed to be correcting that, which is what, Thomas referenced, which is really interesting how he did that. I actually was one of them people, and I grew up poor because I was in the Bronx and in the inner cities of New York, and I grew up poor as a result of being a descendant of the enslaved people and having to deal with systemic racism through generations of those kinds of things, right? So affirmative action was for me. And the first thing that I experienced was going to a private middle school, which was created to help Black and brown children in the inner cities to have a chance, smart kids who the public school system couldn't do anything for, right? And so I was able to do that. Then I got into a scholars program that was created to help Black and brown children get into independent schools, right? These were these kinds of programs and institutions that were created to rectify, generations of systemic racism and disenfranchisement, right? So I got to do that. Then I went to a boarding school where I was radicalized because I went to school with people whose names were on the building, and I did not understand that coming from my poor Bronx house. How is your name on this building? What kind of money must that be? And I never understood that, how anyone could access that. But I was like, oh, y'all don't want me to be here? That's cool. I'm still gonna be here. I'm gonna take advantage of it. And I knew I was there because of affirmative action. I knew I was there because the Lawrenceville School had to take in a certain number of Black children and have them come and meet those quotas so that they wouldn't look like the racist institution that they had long been, right? Cool. Then I ended up coming to University of Pennsylvania. Same thing. I didn't even know that University of Pennsylvania was Ivy League because we don't get taught that in the hood, right? So I came to the University of Pennsylvania and I was like, all right, how many people are here? 5%? What was it 10 years ago? 5%? What was it 20 years ago? 5%? Cool, they're towing the line. They're keeping the same number of Black people and they're not gonna fix that. Cool. I came at the time where we battling the affirmative action. I was here from 98 to 2002. And we were like, when are y'all gonna change the numbers? But I knew I was at the University of Pennsylvania because of affirmative action. It did not matter how smart I was, because I'm brilliant. None of that mattered. Anytime you are a Black person in an institution that was not built for you, it probably is because of affirmative action. And I understood that, and I did not run from that. I didn't want to take the Clarence Thomas, I have merit, and there's no meritocracy in the United States, regardless of race. There's no such thing. So I'm not gonna sit here and try to prove that I deserve to be somewhere. They don't think I deserve to be here because I'm Black. None of the other stuff matters, right? So when I understood that, I was like, the rest of my life and my career is gonna have to be with this understanding that there are going to be people who are going to look at me and pull me in because I'm Black, because I'm woman, because I'm openly queer, and I can check their boxes. It's what I do when I get into those spaces to try to do something. So I became a social worker, retired from that. I'm a public speaker now, and I speak on issues of diversity, equity, and inclusion right now, which I would not be able to do had I not had these experiences of benefiting from affirmative action almost all of my life, right? And seeing what happens when, wow, someone actually gets a chance that they wouldn't have gotten before because of the systemic racism, right? So we have our conservative brothers and sisters and folks who want us to be looked at just for our merit and just as human beings, and I understand and appreciate that ideal. But America is a racist country built on genocide and enslavement. It will never see us as worthy, as having merit. So what do we do with that? Wait around till they come around and decide that they're gonna give us merit? Or we take advantage of these ways that we can get into these spaces and do what it is that we gotta do. So that's how I've always looked at it, and that has informed my career, to this day. And the awareness of it is what's important. I'm not gonna act like it's not real. I'm not gonna be like, well, I deserve to be here. They don't think that. They're never gonna think that. So I'm here because I'm here, damn it. You had to take me. I'm in that 5%, now what? And I'm gonna do what I need to do. That's why they don't be inviting me to come here and talk, because they tired of me. They're tired of me.
In the courtroom, affirmative action has meant that you get asked, where's your lawyer? When you're the lawyer. You get asked to prove why you belong there when you do. But that means you have to stop getting mad about that and actually do something about it. And it means you have to be twice as good, still, today. On this point, many years ago when I was starting law school, a brilliant man named A. Leon Higginbotham wrote an article. I want you to read this article. It's called An Open Letter to Clarence Thomas. And it was published at the UPenn Law Review. That letter spoke to Thomas, Justice Thomas, and said, look, congratulations, you got nominated to the Supreme Court. In a nutshell, in court, you gotta be very simple. So I say this. There are people who open the door, have the door open for them, they come in, and they hold the door for someone else, right? Others get the door open for them, and then they close the door right away.
They pull up that ladder behind them.
They burn the ladder.
They burn the ladder. Pull it up and burn it. Spread the ashes. Or they may.
Yeah, yeah.
Get Juan Williams to write about it.
Okay, so our next question is looking more towards the future. How can people of color in spaces create resistant structures despite the impact of this decision?
Let me start there. First, I like us to stop using the term people of color.
Thank you. Oh, sorry.
Because when you read the decision, it was very specific about the fact that the schools couldn't show that letting more people in resulted in more quality professionals, right? They're very specific about that. You can't show it. As a matter of fact, the school's decision said, look, Asian Americans have been hurt by this because academically they're so qualified and they're not getting in the same rates, right? Going forward, it's very simple, very simple. We have to design a better test. Richard pointed out to it. The idea is not to be good students. The idea is to be good professionals, whatever it's going to be. Be great at what you're going to do. Well, what test can we design that's going to make sure that everyone taking the test, the same test, comes out and it's a true, as close as we can get, a meritocracy? That's a test that you have to create. Because there should not be anything else besides a one test. Now, the thing about sports, for example, is what? Winners and losers, right? There's no ties. You win or you lose, right? Except for soccer, that doesn't count. But in terms of a test, we have to design a test that makes it very clear. You pass the test, you're in the school. You're not in it. But like Richard said, the test has to include things like talent, things like professionalism, things like numbers, results. And last thing about that test. If the test is really true, sometimes that means that your child, your loved one, won't pass that test. And you can't cheat anymore. You can't use any other vehicle to get that person in. You live with that test. America has never wanted to live with that test of true meritocracy because it means sometimes they won't be able to predict who gets in and stays in. Can you live with that? I can. Because our whole lives we've done that. I can live with it. The problem is that some people can't. And it's going to be up to you to determine, hey, it's too bad. Sometimes you're going to have to live with losing that game. It's okay. Try again.
I really appreciate the idea of a test. I think also sometimes half the battle is mentorship. That means so much to me, but talking to Black children and letting them know that it's possible for them to pass the test in the first place, that they should go and try for the test, and seeing Black people in spaces like these and being able to see that it's attainable and each of them are deserving. We were talking about meritocracy, but also on the opposite end of that, letting Black children know that they're worthy and they are more than invited to be on this space, at least for Black people, or that they're more than deserving, if not more deserving than their counterparts. So I think that's another thing, providing mentorship. As you mentioned, like how can Black people like kind of be an aid or a solution in this situation? That's what I would say. Also pushing more mentorship, especially for Black people in these spaces.
I think it starts in the womb. You can't get to college if you can't read, although we're starting to see that that's not even true. You can get into college when you can't read. And that's the current crisis that we have. I know affirmative action is a thing, but I remember we were talking on the call, and I'm very passionate about the literacy crisis in this country. Like, it is going to destabilize this nation economically because people cannot read and they cannot write, right? So what does that mean if we're trying to create a system of meritocracy? Well, how do you determine merit among people who have not been given the opportunity to learn how to read, right? So we have to start in the womb. So I know Penn is doing something that they did in the Bronx a while ago. They're going to be studying the effects of like pollutants in the air and environment on pregnant people to see what happens. I know when they did it in the Bronx, they found at 5 years old, most of the children had learning disabilities, right? Cool, that's what Penn is going to find out too. And we see that across Philadelphia. I don't know how many of you have ever done any kind of social work in Philadelphia, but we know this to be true, right? These students have severe learning disabilities. So we start in the womb, right? How do we protect those who are bearing the next generation of children from having their children's, like physically be affected, right? So we have to combat environmental racism. Then when we have them, we have to make sure that they can eat, right? Other nations provide care and boxes and support systems and food and all these kinds of things because they know the first few years of a child's life are the most important. Our country does not. We don't even provide parenting classes, right? And we have like the highest infant mortality rate among, these leading nations. That's a problem. We have to start there. Then from there, we have to make sure that we're getting the education in. So our education needs to be improved. 20 years ago, the average reading level was 8th grade, now it's 6th grade. So clearly we're getting worse, right? We need to reverse that trend and make sure that Americans can actually read and write, right? It's not just Black people, although we are disproportionately affected by it. White people can't read either, okay? And when white people can't read, you know that something is going on. I'm gonna keep it real with you. Come on, they can't read. I know I teach them every day. They can't read, right? And I have to laugh or else my head will explode. It's a crisis when the average white American adult can't read beyond the 6th grade level, right? Now, is it by design? Some could say that. I won't put on my tinfoil hat. They need more people to be cogs in the machine than anything else. And for us, they need to send us to prisons, right, to keep that complex going. And they need to send us off to war because we've lost our militaries. And where do they recruit from? They go into the hood, the people that can't read, the people that don't have options like the University of Pennsylvania. That's where they go and they get their soldiers, right? So we could say it's by design. We have to make sure that people are actually given the opportunity to learn how to read and write and make sure that our education is okay. Then we need to support them through K through 12. So we need a K through 12 overhaul. Got to get rid of this no child left behind nonsense. Got to get rid of this Common Core. We have to actually be proactive and not wait until the point where someone is applying to college to try to figure out, do you deserve to be here or not? Because right now, most of the students graduating do not deserve to be in most colleges because they can't read, right? What do we do about that? And how do we make sure that Black people, I also am against people of color because it's a racist term. If you understand racial formation theory and you understand the sociology behind the creation of race, you understand that calling someone a person of color is racist, okay? 2 reasons. One, we don't have colors. The designation of color means that race is based on phenotype, and that is a white, racist, European thing. Also, if we are people of color, who are people? They're white. So it normalizes personhood as whiteness. So we need to stop saying people of color. We are who we are. I told you I'm brilliant. Follow me. So before we get to college, this is not even a college issue. Before we get to college, we have to make sure that our African-American children, our Black children, are actually prepared to be competitive, okay? And that's not happening. And not only is it not happening just in an educational sense, physiologically, they are sicker. Mental health-wise, they are sicker. We had some of the highest suicide rates, especially among Black boys. We have to tackle these things before we start talking about whether or not you got in the University of Pennsylvania or not. And then when you're here, what are you deciding to do? Who are you going to become? What is our responsibility? You're going to become a doctor? Where are you going to work? You want to become a lawyer? Where are you going to work? You want to become, an academic? What are you going to study? I've been African-American studies my whole time. It was African-American studies when I was here. I majored in it proudly. A lot of people wouldn't do that, right? I did it then. I'm getting a PhD in Africology under Malefi Asante, right? I've been committed to this. What are you going to commit to? What is your future going to look like? And what is your contribution going to be? That's how we change all of this. We cannot rely on a Supreme Court that is allowed to do whatever they want, actually whatever the white billionaires that pay for them get to do. We cannot rely on that. We cannot rely on these circuit judges and these lower judges who have been found to send our children to these prisons for pay. We can't rely on any of that. It's going to be on us. And what I'm trying to do right now is get us to think about alternative educational options, us creating our own educational institutions, us thinking about how we can stop relying on the validation from these kinds of institutions to make us feel like we are worth something as Black people in this country and create our own and take care of the education of our own people and do it from a culturally competent perspective. So that's what I'm thinking about. You may think differently.
No, and one of the things I would say, just to close on that and move on to the next question, is that a version of that I say is just stay in the game, right? Even if you look at the different things that the people on this panel do, right? We're all in this fight, we're all in this game, and we all come from incredibly different worlds, right? And what you just outlined is how many different places and how many different ways you can affect this issue. It's not just, let's get the right politicians in and let's hope Franklin wins a case, right? If right, don't do that, right? I love him, but we've known each other forever. But there are so many different ways to help. If it's education, if it's social work, if it's media, because images matter, how images are portrayed matter. So there's all these different ways to affect it. So for me, what I tell people is just stay in the game. Everybody can't be, let me get elected to the Supreme Court and hope I can be the vote that swings it. That's great. Hopefully we do that. But you know what? There's so many different ways and places to have an impact on this issue if you care about it, and you should. But if you care about it, just find your way to contribute and make that thing better. And I literally think that the diversity of the panel here is a good representation of that.
One more thing on that though. Staying in the game is important, but look at this. In the case again, this case involved a group that's kind of fictitious. They didn't actually suffer the harms, but they got the benefit, right? It's crazy. So in law, standing is huge, and they skipped that. So my point is this group was put together in 2014 for the one purpose, to overturn affirmative action. They studied it, they planned it, they're very, very intentional about that. So the point is here, Rich says stay in the game, right? You have to be great at your game. You have to be brilliant. You have to be the best at your game. You can't just be there. You can't just be here. Hey, I'm here. No. You have to be very, very good. It takes work, effort, and determination.
Thank you all. Very, very insightful.
And money. Which I ain't got.
I'm personally fascinated with this idea that you were talking about creating independent and resilient Black structures. And obviously within the discourse about affirmative action, there's a lot of discourse on diversity in general in education and in the work field. I'm wondering if any of you have thoughts specifically on the importance of diversity in your respective work fields and strategies for creating independent and resilient Black structures within your respective professions.
Taking control of your own destiny is always important, right? And I work in the media industry, right? Television, film, all that kind of stuff, Broadway musicals, all that. And what I get to do at this stage in my career is I get to pick stories I want to tell, put teams together that I want to tell them with, and tell them on the platforms that I want to tell them. But it wasn't always that way. I was a corporate guy for a long, long time, until some people who were senior to me must have read the letter that, Higginbotham wrote, but said, hey, you should do this, come on in, right? When I didn't know anything and I was a corporate guy. And they're like, there's this thing called producing. You could be pretty good at it, and let me show you how it's like, and here's this project, why don't you come on board with it, right? And that invitation, because when you talk about making money and having the money to do it, I have the ability to do what I do because things I've done have made people money, right? That's just facts. So then I get to do other things because that's happened, right? And so the idea of taking control of your own destiny, whether it's an educational institution, whether it's a hospital and some type of medical thing, whether it's your law firm that you can do whatever you want to do in, finding a way to be able to control your destiny and have that impact is really, really important, and us owning that. Now, the one thing that where I get a little bit computational sometimes when I say stay in the game is there also is something to staying inside these institutions, right? It is great to do all kinds of alternative stuff and do that, and that's gonna take a minute. And while we're doing that, We need other people in these institutions that are driving change, that are senior enough and willing to do it. And that's why I love that letter that you talked about, right? That are willing to do it. We met 1,000 years ago when you were willing to do things that other people, he didn't just found Onyx, he'd been doing this since he got out of here, right? When you were willing to do things that people in your position are scared to do. But you know, I got this thing and I got a job and we're getting this promotion and wifey and I just had a baby and I'm gonna play it a little safe for now, right? And to have that courage, because I wouldn't be sitting where I'm sitting if somebody didn't say, hey, I know you're doing this corporate thing, come on over and let's do this. All right. And so staying in that game is sometimes going outside and doing independent things, but we can't wait for that to be the only solution, which is why I say stay in the game on all these fronts, because we never know which one's going to break through and be the one that makes the difference and makes that initial move. So we need to fight on all of these fronts, and whatever talents you can bring to the table and wherever you can be excellent, go do that, because all those things put together will hopefully get us where we need to be. So my 2 cents on that.
I got a question for you. I'm gonna push back a little bit.
Come on, that's what we're here for.
What about all those sisters that just got fired over the last year or so that were all put in those upper positions to bring about diversity and change and initiatives and things like that across all of these sectors? We started seeing all of them. They were getting hired after George Floyd was killed, and then this last year they all let them all go. A sister that in your field in Hollywood that was working for the Academy, she was brought in to try to change, you know, some of the stuff there. She just left because she's like, this is nonsense. They're not letting me do anything. It's all for show. As somebody who has worked at those top spaces and been in that on that glass cliff as a Black woman, you know, kind of in charge, and you get to this realization, it's like, oh, no, y'all actually don't want to change anything. You hired me to be the face of this, to pretend, you know, that you're doing things, but actually you have no intention of changing anything. What do we do, you know, about that? And I'm not disagreeing with you that change won't happen unless people are in there doing it. But we also see that people are being brought in for so-called change, but are not given the space or the room or the resources or anything, opportunities to actually make change, but rather be the mouthpiece or the diverse, you know, image. But they either getting fired or they're leaving because they're like, yeah, this is not happening. What do we do with that?
100%. What I do with that is I am very clear on, I didn't say it was going to be easy, nor that all of it was going to work. Right? And sometimes fighting and losing that battle to move it forward an inch so someone else can win and do it. I'm one who had to leave to make my mark. So I very much believe in what you're saying. I was a corporate dude the whole time, but to make the mark that I eventually needed to make, I needed to be outside. But part of what I was able to do and learn in the corporate side is because some changes got made, so I got to see some stuff until I hit that ceiling. I got to be a point where then I could go off and do my own thing. So for me, it doesn't mean that stay in the institutions because everybody in that role is going to work and everybody's just going to get it and come along. Absolutely not. But I just think that fighting on all of those fronts together is what gets us there. I absolutely don't think it's like, just stay in the company and the companies will get it and everybody will come around and it's going to be great. That is absolutely not what I'm saying. But I'm saying whatever movement we can get there, plus the independent thing, plus the legal thing, plus the political thing together, I believe is the only way to do it, all collectively.
And I'm with you.
Let me respond to also. Can I answer your question? The ladies who were brought in and inspired, right? Look, this case again. These cases tell you what you can do. These students, more importantly, these people behind the students said, look, we don't want affirmative action. We don't want it. So they were very, very clear and intentional about making sure that they could fight in court and eliminate it. So these people who were fired, right, there are, in California at least, we have, and also Title VII, you have rights you can enforce, but you got to enforce them. Here's the problem. There aren't enough people who are willing to put themselves, their money, their talent, their skills into the litigation. Litigation takes 3, 5, 10 years, right? Again, this case came down in 2023. They began in 2014. Mm-hmm. They had a cause, they had a plan, they lost many cases, and they ultimately won. That's my response. We have to understand that it's going to take a concerted legal effort, right? Most of the challenges we've won, have been legal efforts. Brown versus Board of Education was his crown jewel. after losing many cases before. Losing many, and then we finally got the right one. So that's my response to you would be like, these ladies have to sue. They gotta bring lawsuits and stay with them over the course of time. That's what they got. That's
Well, I mean, they were fired because they stopped the funding for their positions. All the DEI stuff, they got rid of. I know as a public speaker that I have not been, engaged as much because the schools they're no longer willing to pay for it because they're scared of what their board is going to do, like the University of Pennsylvania that just had one of their folks go on national television and say he doesn't want his name associated with, and he's taking all his money away, right? And the lady that sent the check for $1 and was like, this is what you're going to get from me as long as you allow these students to go to the Palestinian Art Festival or whatever. So, I mean, it becomes a situation where it's like, well, if they pull the money and they pull the money for your position, you don't have it. But I think what I was going to say, and I'm with you, but I think why we're starting to see people become more speculative and imaginative about a future that is independent of these things is because they were having the same conversation 100 years ago, right? Like, you think of Du Bois, you think of Cooper, you think of Garvey, you think of all these people. They were having these same conversations. Do we work within these institutions? Do we strike out on our own? It's been 100 years of us in these upper level kind of spaces trying to figure this out, right? And trying to figure out how we fix it. And that's 5 generations. We have not changed a whole lot. Let's be honest, there were more Black people in this school in the 60s and 70s than there are now, right? So we've kind of reverted. So I think what people are seeing is like, yeah, maybe change isn't happening in a way and quick enough, right? And of course, this is a microwave kind of generation. We want things to happen instantly. We want to get it done, but we also have the means to do it. We have technology now. We have access to things like social media and these other platforms that are allowing us to kind of create these things. When I started my school virtually. Anybody in the globe can attend my school. And it took me literally 2 days to conceive of it. And to go and implement it, it took a couple of weeks. Now I run my own school. So I wouldn't be able to do that like 10 years ago, like 10 years ago, I wouldn't be able to do that because the technology wouldn't exist, but now it does. So now young people are seeing the possibilities and they're starting to think, why do we keep supporting these institutions that are consistently over and over again showing us that they do not care about us, they do not have our interests, they do not want to do better for us? Maybe we can take it and do this for ourselves, which is what they were talking about 100 years ago, what they were talking about 50 years ago. But now they actually have technology and means to do it, and so we're starting to see that. So we're seeing different models, educational models that are happening. The Afrofuturism conversation is brilliant, and I love what we are speculating and imagining for our future outside of these things. Again, I'm not saying you have to completely abandon it. If this is valuable to you, you want your grandkids to go to the University of Pennsylvania, cool, like nobody's mad at you for that. But I think there's an urgency that I think right now we have. Food costs 40% more. Young people can't leave their parents' homes and afford their own places to live. They can't find jobs that pay living wages. There's an urgency that we have not even experienced. You all are graduating with Ivy League degrees, and many of you are going to go back to your parents' homes because you cannot find a job. That's urgent. That is scary. That urgency is what leads to innovation. That urgency of having to create why do you think we have so many content creators? Why do you think we have so many young people that are taking it to TikTok, and I'm gonna get 1 million followers on TikTok and I can make hundreds of $1,000s a year just for shooting videos because I can't go get a regular job, So we have to adjust for that, and we have to start accepting that maybe that's where people are looking, and if that's viable, then maybe instead of pouring our resources back into these institutions that haven't always favored us or supported us, maybe we take our resources and start pouring it into these younger people who and their innovative ideas, and see what they're doing and support those, because those may be the future for, our people to live successfully and not have to endure these institutions. The mental health of our young people in these kinds of institutions I'm a mental health social worker, it is scary, bad. So I'm with you, bro, that we need to be there, but it's hard for me to advocate for Black people to sacrifice their mental health, their overall well-being, to try to fight inside of institutions that are constantly giving them the door when now they do have opportunities, viable opportunities, to create and establish their own institutions. We just have to see our own as valuable. An NAACP award should be as valuable as an Oscar, right? We ain't got there yet, but we getting there. That's all I'm saying.
I think what you said also about the need for people to be in these spaces regardless is really important, especially talking to like young professionals. Hi, current Onyx. Young professionals right now, I will never forget this first year of nursing, being a Black woman in this space, adjusting, being outspoken, wanting to speak up for my patients, and balancing the idea of women getting fired for coming in, doing what they were expected to do. And I would love to hear any advice you have, like, because all of you have flourished in your different perspectives and different avenues in these spaces as Black people who
I think
are
you just
able
called
to
us
talk.
old. I think you just called us old, but go ahead.
No, all of you have flourished.
I'm happy
I'm
to
the
be
baby,
old.
period.
I made it.
So, okay, I'll kick off the advice because I'm an auntie too. I've been saying it all day. That, like, for me, with protecting myself, I document everything. If I have a weird interaction with another coworker, with a patient, I'm documenting it. And when it comes time for me to go to the principal's office, I have my list of things to go through, and also I'm open to hearing, but for me, that's what I need to protect myself, because in this world, people are losing their jobs, and that's a real thing. I would love if anyone could also throw in any more perspective on what they find has been helpful with navigating that as well. Fellow aunties and uncles.
No, exactly. No, thank you. Fellow aunties and uncles. I like that, by the way, I like that. I think there's lots of different techniques and approaches. And for me, not being worried about the consequences, which sounds like it is a privilege of the old man thing, but I've actually, he'll tell you, been like this a long time, which is like, I'm gonna do what I do and sort of say what I say. And sometimes that's meant, I have been asked to leave a building, right? I've been asked, you need to leave this building, right? But I was okay with that because I was always confident in like, I'm gonna figure something out, right? Like I work really hard, I'm not stupid, like I'm gonna figure something out. And being willing to do that, back when we talked about, we said similar things about finding the cracks, right? Here's what the institution's like, so how can I navigate and find my unique way in that? And I've always been comfortable with living on that edge, right? I think I've had one job that was like a posted job that here's what the role was. We're gonna figure stuff out and do this, and I'm gonna do a little this and do this little side thing over here and do all of that. And sometimes you do have to be willing to like, hey, I'm gonna speak up because I'm the only one that's in this room. I got invited to this room, and if I don't do it, it's never gonna get said. Or if somebody lets that go, like I heard that comment that got made. And if somebody lets that go, like who else is gonna say something if I don't? And that has meant sometimes some backlash for me, right? But I've been willing and comfortable because, to your point about being brilliant, I got some stripes. I'm pretty good at what I do. I got some stripes. And so I have been at times willing to put those cards on the table and go, all right, we got to have this conversation right now. And again, that comes with time and wisdom. So in the beginning, you may or may not be comfortable playing that card, but to the point, you're going to hear some themes that are emerging, which I love. As you get to that position where you can help, as you get to that position where you can make a point, as you get to your position where you can say something and not worry about the repercussions, do it and be comfortable in that. Right. And that has been one of the things for me that is like, I'm always going to, take care of my business and do that. And then when it comes time, if it has to come to that, it has to come to that because I have to live with myself. And for me, I've always been willing to do what needs to be done, say what needs to be said, stand on the reputation I got. And if that works out, great. And if it doesn't, I'll have to figure something else out.
I would say a couple of things. Number one, be patient. I think that right now, in your space where you are right now, you should get to know each other. I mean, really, who are you? What do you like to do? What are your interests? What are your dreams and goals? Get to know each other, your resources for each other, and plan. Litigation, I like litigation because it takes planning. Again, I go back to the same case because I was asked to talk about the case. The case the affirmative action cases, they planned. It was a 9-year battle, and they won. They had an objective, they won. Plan. You can live, you can pay your bills, but plan also, and think about the long-term impact. And in that planning, I'd like you to read this article. It's an article, it's an old article, but it's by Randall Kennedy. It's called Martin Luther King's Constitution, A Legal History of the Montgomery Bus Boycott. Because that article talks about the bus boycott. Before there was internet, before there was email, they actually, for a year, organized rides, carpools, and they shut down a whole structure of a bus system by being organized, by being on it with each other. And the internet is a powerful tool, of course, but we have to plan and rely upon each other. You know, I'm very grateful to be old because it wasn't promised. That's number one. Number two, now that my friends and our kids are out the door, nothing to do except work with you. We actually have the ability now to take your ideas and your energy and make it work. That article will show you that. You know, Dr. King was a young man, right? But there were old people in the room who dressed him, literally put him in the right direction and said, hey, do this, and that. They worked together. That's what I think we can do. That's why I was so happy to be here, because it was a chance to be with this guy, but also to be able to talk to you and say, plan, think, and be prepared. There are people who literally want to take what you have. They literally, this is a perfect example. This case, they were 9 years to take away what you have. Their goal is to not have 5%, 2%. Their goal is to have it down as low as possible. So what? Too bad, you didn't make it, right? But we have to plan and say, how do we make sure that our goal is to be represented in a certain place? I'll give one example of that. I'll give you just real quick. In LA, we have a high school that I support. The high school is a Catholic school and has a pretty diverse population, but the population of Black students is 6%. LA County is right around 10%, right? My goal is to have at least 12% Black boys at that school. How? Well, by any means necessary, right? So for me, that means that I can get a young Black boy who can go to that school. He's pretty fast, he's pretty talented. Guess what? I'll get people to pay for his education, let him bounce that ball and run the ball. But guess what? He comes here, goes to Princeton, he gets to go to Brown, and hopefully gets to become brilliant and use his talents in a positive way. It takes planning, it takes goals, and it takes networking. So that's my response to that.
What do y'all young people be texting each other? IDGAF? Very much like this brother said, I'm not worried about the consequences. The ancestors that inspire me were willing to do whatever it took to survive. And the penalties were a lot higher. And I speak to you as someone who has been arrested for protesting, as somebody who has made the government watch list. I made the Homeland Security watch list. They think I'm a terrorist. It's all good. Because I DGAF, right? So what do you stand for? At the end of the day, it's all about your purpose. And if you get into a career that is not aligned with your purpose, your spiritual purpose, you're not going to enjoy it, right? It's only going to last for so long. Sure, you get some money, it'd be cool, you travel the world, live the soft life, whatever. But at the end of the day, you're not going to be happy. Everything that I have done throughout the entire course of my career is something aligned with my purpose, and my purpose is to liberate my people from the tyranny of white supremacy. So every single job I have had, from being a mental health social worker and working to fight against houselessness and poverty, which was the bulk of my career, to being a writer who writes very radical things, calling for radical change, to being a public speaker who goes around the world and calls out these racist CEOs to their faces. I love when I do that, because they sit there, it's like, you paid me $20,000 to come and call you a racist. I love it. And I do it, and I don't care, because it needs to be said. And I am firm in my understanding of who I am and my belief, and I'm willing to risk it all. And that is part of why they love me, because I'm irreverent, right? Now, can you do that coming straight out the box and nobody know who you are? No, I tell people all the time. I started blogging in 2004, almost 20 years ago. I had to build up to this. I was making videos in my bathroom that I was putting on YouTube, okay? That's how they saw me and started inviting me to speak places. But I was speaking, I was getting it out there. I was telling people, these are my thoughts about things, this is what we need to do. And then people started saying, we should pay her to come talk, right? Shout out to 4A and all the performing arts people where I got my stage presence from and learned how to embody myself, you know, and be in these characters and perform as needed. Because it's very difficult going in front of a company like Amazon or Apple and have to talk to them about DEI, knowing damn well they don't care about any of it. And I'm just like, cut me my check so I can fund my school, kind of thing, right? It's very difficult. It's the mental gymnastics you have to do. But own yourself, know who you are, understand your purpose, stay convicted. Don't give up on, you know, what it is that you want to do. Don't let anyone convince you that what you want to do in this world isn't good enough. A lot of times our parents or our family members will say, well, why, I remember my dad was like, well, why you go to an Ivy League school to get a degree in African American studies? You could have done that anywhere. I'll never forget he said that to me. And I was like, word, I'm paying your kidney treatments right now. You're welcome. It was a source of tension. My own father was questioning this. I should have went into business, should have become a lawyer. That's what I was supposed to do. And I was like, no, that's not what I want to do. He couldn't understand it. Be who you are, stand firm in who you are. Sometimes you have to go against your parents. Sometimes you have to go against your family. And when you get out into this world and you're doing this work, if you believe in it and you can sleep at night, I'm telling you, it's everything. It really is everything. When you start getting to the point you're looking in the mirror and you can't stand who you see, you know you're not living right, all right? So make sure that y'all picking career paths and moving in directions that are gonna align with your spirit, because at the end of the day, that's what matters. Don't do any harm to our people. Don't exploit our people. Help our people. Don't get into any kind of jobs and positions that you're taking advantage of Black people or you're becoming a part of a system that has been destroying us. Do something different, okay? Fight for us. I'm telling you, and that's like me begging, like fight for us. We need your generation to fight for us, all right? Some of us are tired, and I might move to Ghana, like you know what I mean? I might go follow Nina and James and all of them when they left and said, I'm tired. They couldn't see the change happening. That's why they left. They couldn't see it. All the talk that James Baldwin, all the clips you see on TikTok and things, all the things, they left because they could not see the change happening and they didn't want to die here. And I'm reaching that point. But y'all gonna make it different. I know you are. I know you are. If we survive this climate crisis, y'all gonna make a change. I feel you. What y'all got over there? It's okay. Sorry, I'm still Black. Come on, sis. That's right. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. I just wanted to know.
Yeah, I can guess from the general vibe that people are hungry.
Yes, it's almost 6 o'clock.
Thank you, Marissa, by the way, for the follow-up.
That's a great question. That's a great question.
My job better than me. Thank you all so much for providing your valuable insights. I don't want to end the conversation prematurely. If there are any final remarks that people want to make.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you all. I will now be passing the microphone to Becca Zella, our current Onyx president.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Vega Zella Mbofana, but you can call me Zella, and I'm the current president of the Onyx Senior Honor Society. It's my distinct pleasure to be here with all of you. And before we get started pinning, I'd like to do two things. First, to show appreciation to those members of Onyx who were inducted in the spring. The alumni were not here to pin them, and those who are being inducted today have that honor. And second, I would like to just say that our members have been and continue to be great leaders on campus and have dedicated themselves to creating and sustaining excellence in the various clubs and societies that they run. Quite a few are actually not here today because they're running different events that are happening for homecoming. And second, I would like to thank Victoria Hill from the college class of 1982 and Murray Spencer from the college class of 1975 for being here and pinning our new members. And if you could both come up, I would appreciate that. Yeah, from this side. Thank you. Thank you. So if you can stand by Kayla. So those who are being pinned, we just ask that you would come up this way, shake the hands of both Victoria and Murray, and then go down the other way. And there are brief bios of those who are pinning, just so you can all get to know them. And we will start with Tanaya Baker. Tanaya is a senior in the college, majoring in neuroscience and minoring in chemistry. She's currently involved in Big Brothers Big Sisters of America, Young Quakers. She's the current co-chair of community engagement and membership for the National Society of Black Women, and she's involved in psychiatry research. Post-graduation, she intends to pursue a degree in emergency medicine and trauma surgery. Tanaya. Next, we have Mila Kati. Mila is a senior majoring in design, hailing from the US Virgin Islands. Her journey through academia has been marked by a deep love for creativity and a passion for making a difference. She's a prominent member of the Exolano Project, UPenn's first premier spoken word poetry group. Mila's post-graduation plans include making an impact by teaching in underprivileged areas. Mila. Victoria Chinaka. Victoria is a pre-medical student majoring in neuroscience and dual minoring in chemistry and gender, sexuality, and women's studies. On campus, she is a Johnson Scholar, president of Circle K, and communications chair for the pre-health fraternity, Alpha Iota Gamma. She is also a former WPTP tutor and organic chemistry tutor at Weingarten. Outside of campus, she does neuropsychopharmacology research with addiction and also does clinical research at CHOP in pediatric sepsis. After graduation, she plans to take a single gap year to do research and travel, and then will be attending the Perelman School of Medicine at the University of Pennsylvania through the Johnson Scholar Linkage Program. Victoria. Tyler Harris. Tyler is a senior in the College of Arts and Sciences, studying communication and consumer psychology. On campus, she's involved in the West Philadelphia Tutoring Project, the University Honor Council, the Wharton Undergraduate Media and Entertainment Club, and the Major Advising Program. After she graduates, she plans to pursue a career in public relations or marketing within the media and entertainment industry. Tyler. Rakaya Lucas Cadwell. Rakaya is currently studying abroad at King's College in London. She's passionate about public health and majors in health and societies, race, gender, and health on the pre-med track. Post-graduation, she intends to work in clinical research while applying to medical school. She's not here, but a round of applause for Rakaya. Mason Morial. Mason is a senior majoring in politics, philosophy, and economics. He is a member of First Generation Investors, Penn Students for Students, My Brother's Keeper, Club Basketball, and is a Black Wharton General Body member. Upon graduation, he plans on working in finance in New York and hopes to pursue an MBA in the near future. Chinyelu Ojukwu. Chinyelu is a senior in the college, double majoring in neuroscience and psychology and minoring in chemistry on the pre-med track. She's currently the external chair of West African Wave, the West African dance team at Penn, and also of the Penn African Student Association. Since her freshman year, she has been a mentor and high school coordinator of Community School Student Partnerships, which is a mentoring and tutoring program under the Netta Center that builds mutually beneficial relationships with K-12 students in West Philadelphia. Aside from clubs, she's a research assistant in Dr. Rebecca Waller's Eden Lab, and her main hobby, going on 8 years, has been hair braiding. Chinyelu. Noor Osman. Noor is a senior in the College of Arts and Sciences, majoring in economics. Her journey through academia has been enriched by her involvement in various organizations, including the Penn Undergraduate Economics Society, the College Admissions Network, and the Mayor's Scholars of Philadelphia. Mentorship is a significant part of her life. She serves as a mentor for both the Undergraduate Economics Society and the College Admissions Network. In addition to her academic pursuits, she has dedicated her undergraduate years to the Netta Center for Community Partnerships. She serves as an SEO, sponsor of Educational Opportunity, Career and Tech Development Ambassador for the class of 2023 to 2024. Noor. Shayla Pimentel. Shayla is a marketing and communications major with plans of going into sports marketing. She is an Afro-Latina who is involved as the president of the Dominican Haitian Student Organization, the head of creative for the Latinx magazine, as well as a part of Blackwater Consulting. She enjoys baking and basketball and is an avid Celtics supporter. Katie Shippey. Katie is majoring in economics and concentrating in healthcare management. She's actively involved on campus as the graphic design director of Penn Integrative Medicine Club and is the founder of the Speak Up project at Penn, a data-driven mental health initiative. Off campus, she's a STEM project assistant for the Philadelphia Education Fund and a research assistant at the Penn School of Nursing, where she studies the relationship between nutritional supplementation and externalizing behavior in children. Katie is most passionate about engaging in population health research, implementing culturally tailored health interventions, and increasing literacy in marginalized communities. Katie. And last but not least, Jamal Spence. Jamal is a neuroscience major who is pursuing minors in consumer psychology and chemistry. He spends a large part of his free time writing poetry and more recently rock climbing at the campus gym. He plans on going to medical school at some point after graduation, and his immediate post-graduation plans are to continue researching and studying the factors that affect decision-making. Jamal. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to Victoria and Murray for being here. We really appreciate you.
All right, and let's just have another round of applause for the moderator, the panelists, and the entire class of 2024. Fantastic. So before I get deeper into my comments, I just want to ensure you that I will not be up here nearly as long as I was earlier. I certainly don't want to get in between anyone and food because I know that feeling. The panel was fantastic and gave us a lot to think about. If you'd like to leave here with an actionable item to contribute to the fight for affirmative action and anti-Black racism more broadly, here it is. I would like to encourage everyone in the room, especially Onyx undergraduate students and alumni, to consider pursuing careers where you fight for civil rights, including affirmative action. This is no knock against anyone who is pursuing a career in finance or banking. Making a lot of money is nice, but I ask that you also please consider how you can give back through the work that you do. Contrary to popular belief, there are a number of jobs from government to nonprofits where you can make a good salary and fight against anti-Black racism. Come find me during the reception if you'd like to learn more. If you're an Onyx alum and want to get involved with the graduate board, again, please find me during the reception. If you enjoyed this event and would like to see others like it, or want to support Onyx, as well as help Onyx prepare for its 50th anniversary in 2024, again, we humbly ask for your financial contributions to help us meet our ambitious goal. Again, the link is tinyurl.com/onyx-gofundme-2023. I would also like to take a moment to individually thank everyone who helped make this event possible. From the graduate board, Joe Watkins, college, class of 75, thank you so much. Rudy Clark, Wharton, class of 77. Vicki Hill, college, class of 82. Jean Charles, Wharton, class of 87. Michaela Warwick, college, class of 2020. Our alumni volunteers, Murray Spencer, college, class of 75. Kim Gashard, FAS, class of 1976. Shari Brown, college, class of 79, and graduate school, class of 79. I would also like to thank the entire Onyx undergraduate class of 2024, especially Zella and Bofana, Josiah Zongo, Khalid, Moyoldin, and Lynn Larabi. And others who have helped make this event possible include Bakari White, Lindsay Pulley, Attila Tuba, thank you, the Performing Arts Council, McCoo Black Cultural Center, Penn Alumni Relations, and Dana Ritchie Troy. And before I go, I want to leave you with a quote from one of my favorite new artists, Victoria Monet, to think deeply about how you can leave and make tangible change. It's from her song Hollywood, featuring the legendary group Earth, Wind, and Fire. What do you live for? What are you here for? What do you breathe for? What do you stand for? What would you die for? What will you leave when you're gone? What are you here for? How could you give more? How could you love more? What do you live for? And with that, thank you and have a wonderful evening. Now on to the reception.